American War for Independence that the Second Continental Congress appointed a committee to draft a framework for a new government. The committee's report, known as the Articles of Confederation, was adopted by Congress in November 1777. The articles were then sent to the individual states for ratification. In March of 1781, the Articles of Confederation became the law of the land. With the war with Britain officially ending in 1783, the United States began to govern itself independently under its new laws. The Articles of Confederation, however, proved to be a weak and ineffective frame of government. It allowed for only one legislative body composed of representatives chosen annually by the state legislatures. Each state was only allowed one vote in Congress regardless of population. The new Congress was given no power to tax or control commerce. There was no independent judicial or executive branch to enforce federal laws. All of this was done to prevent the central government from becoming as powerful as the British King and Parliament had been when they governed the colonies. With restrictive powers, Congress could do little to keep the new nation together. Something had to be done to save the Union. In September of 1786, two important leaders of the new nation called for a convention in Philadelphia the following May. These leaders were James Madison of Virginia and Alexander Hamilton of New York. The goal of this convention was to make important changes to the Articles of Confederation. The end result, however, would produce one of the most important documents in human history and a framework for democracy that has lasted over 200 years. We present to you now, We the People, the story of the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States was drafted by the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania between May 25th and September 17th, 1787. Of the 13 states, all but Rhode Island sent delegates. There were 55 delegates in all. These were men of power and property, lawyers, statesmen, professors, university presidents, judges, and financiers. Among the more notable were James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington, the victorious general and hero of the Revolutionary War. At the time of the convention, he was the most loved and revered man in America. On the first day, the delegates elected George Washington as president of the convention. With Washington overseeing the debates, it was certain that they would be taken seriously by the delegates and eventually the people. It was also agreed to keep the proceedings secret so that no delegate could bow down to public pressure. The detailed accounts of the actual debates recorded by James Madison remained secret until 1840, 4 years after his death, over 50 years after the convention. Exceeding their instructions to revise the Articles of Confederation, the delegates decided to frame a new form of government. This bold move was encouraged by the fact that the convention could only recommend this new form of government. The states still had the right to accept or reject any of the changes made. Edmund Randolph of the Virginia delegation opened the debate with a slate of 15 resolutions. These became known as the Virginia Plan, and they formed the basis for almost all of the discussions at the convention. The Virginia Plan would create a new central government with a bicameral or two-chambered legislature, an executive elected by the legislature, and a separate judiciary. In the plan, representation in the legislature would be based on each state's population. Delegates of the smaller states raised concern over this issue. They supported the plan proposed by William Patterson in New Jersey. The New Jersey plan retained the Articles of Confederation, which gave the states equal power in the legislature, but added a Supreme Court. Debate on the Virginia and New Jersey plans were long and heated and continued until mid-July when Roger Sherman, a delegate from Connecticut, offered a compromise. His plan called for a two-chambered legislature. The lower branch, the House of Representatives, would be proportional to the population of each state and elected by the people. The upper branch, the Senate, would contain an equal number of representatives from each state. Their respective state legislatures would choose its members. The president would be elected by an electoral college composed of men chosen by the voters of each state. The electoral votes of each state would be equal to the number of its representatives and senators. The candidate with the second highest vote in the Electoral College would become vice president. If no one received a majority of votes, the House of Representatives would choose the president, with each state allowed one vote. The delegates also gave the president the right to nominate judges and other officials. The Senate, however, would have final approval. The The president would have the power to veto legislation, but a two-thirds majority of both houses of Congress could override his veto. The president would also become commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The delegates also allowed for a Supreme Court with its members appointed for life. They had the power to decide if a law was constitutional or not. The delegates believed that this three-branched form of government, with a legislative, executive, and judicial body, would serve the American people well. Its system of checks and balances between the different branches assured the public that this new government would not and could not become as tyrannical as Britain and its king had been. A committee of 5 men drafted the new Constitution. They were Secretary of the Convention William Johnson, Rufus King, Gouverneur Morris, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. On September 17, 1787, after 3.5 months of debate and compromise, the United States Constitution was signed by 39 of the 55 delegates. The convention sent the new document to Congress, which in turn submitted it to each of the states for ratification. One fight was over, but a new one had just begun. People who favored the new Constitution were called Federalists, and they knew that the road to ratification would be a long and trying one. State conventions would have to be held to adopt or reject this new form of government. Powerful men such as Patrick Henry and Samuel Adams opposed the Constitution and voiced their opinions about it. These men and others like them were called anti-federalists. They feared state sovereignty would be lost to the federal government. They also believed that without a Bill of Rights, the people were helpless against a strong central ruling power. The Constitution's staunchest defenders were James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay, future Chief Justice of the First Supreme Court. Together, they wrote 85 essays in favor of ratification. These essays would forever be known as the Federalist Papers. It is considered by many to be the best analysis of the Constitution ever written. Opposition was quelled after James Madison and the Federalists pledged to add amendments guaranteeing the civil rights of the people upon ratification of the Constitution. On December 7, 1787, Delaware became the first state to ratify the Constitution, followed by Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, and New Hampshire. These states were all that were needed to make the new government legal, but no true union was possible without the states of Virginia and New York. In late June 1788, Virginia ratified the Constitution by a mere 10-vote margin. New York was next to ratify with only a 3-vote margin of victory. Rhode Island became the last state to ratify in May 1790 by a vote of 34 to 32. The Federalists, led by Hamilton and Madison, had won. James Madison would forever be known as the father of the Constitution for all of his efforts in writing the document and for promoting its ideals. Madison would later become the nation's 4th president. Alexander Hamilton would become the nation's 1st Secretary of the Treasury. The Constitution became the supreme law of the land, and a new government was born. The old Congress, under the Articles of Confederation, set the dates when the new government would begin. They chose New York City as the temporary capital. In February 1789, the first elections for the House and Senate were held. It was also at this time that electors cast their ballot for the nation's first president. By a unanimous vote, George Washington was elected President of the United States. John Adams was elected Vice President. The inauguration took place on April 30th, 1789 in New York City. With Congress passing the Judiciary Act of 1789, the Supreme Court was established, headed by Chief Justice John Jay. In June of 1789, James Madison proposed a series of amendments to the House of Representatives to protect the civil rights and liberties of the American people. 12 of these amendments were offered to the states. The states ratified 10 of them by December 15, 1791. Together, they are known as the Bill of Rights, and they are the cornerstone to individual freedom in America. Over the past 200 years, the Constitution has been amended just 27 times. These changes were necessary to keep the Constitution functioning properly in an ever-changing world. Our founding fathers had the foresight and knowledge to know that the Constitution must remain a flexible and living document. Now that we know about the history of the Constitution, let us closely examine this historic document and the powers it gives the Congress, the President, the Supreme Court, the states, and most importantly, the people. We begin with the preamble to the Constitution, which clearly defines its objectives. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. With these words, the Constitution declares that the government of the United States' main purpose is to serve the people. The people would not serve the government. Article 1 of the Constitution deals with powers of the Congress. It states that Congress shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Members of the House are chosen by popular election in the states every 2 years. A representative must be at least 25 years old, a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years, and must be an inhabitant of the state in which he or she is elected to office. The Constitution allows for a census of the people to be taken every 10 years to determine the number of representatives allowed to each state. No absolute limit was placed on the number of members of the House, but in 1913, Congress limited the membership to 435. Vacancies in representation from any state are filled through special state elections.